Hi, I'm Donna Sinclair, and I am running for state representative in the 18th Legislative District, Position 2. I am here today with Alexandra Yost, the owner of Our Bar and also a city council person in Washougal. Alexandra owns a small business, and I've been really interested in talking with folks who are small business owners, especially restaurants. Restaurants have been hardest hit by COVID-19 in many ways, along with childcare providers and some other specific businesses. One of the reasons I'm really interested in restaurants in particular is that they seem to be the center of our social sphere, and also I come from a small business restaurant background. My mother owned a restaurant in Long Beach, Washington when I was a little girl. We lived there for a number of years, and I started bussing tables and washing dishes and eventually becoming a backup cook when I was 11 and 12 years old. And then my uncle owned a restaurant, Leslie's Fine Dining, in Vancouver. And so by the time I was 15, I was bussing tables there. And then I waited tables until I was almost 30 years old when I got started back to school. So I understand the difficulties of the restaurant business. My mother has talked to me a lot about her empathy for people who are in small business, who own restaurants in particular, because you have to have pretty high receipts every day just to get by. And so we're going to talk with Alex today about a lot of different things. With that, I do want to say, Alex, that you described yourself as a community organizer, chef, mother, city councilwoman, entrepreneur, and Shougan for life. I really love that introduction. So I asked you if we could start by talking about your background and journey to Washougal and how you got Our Bar started.
Yeah, definitely. Super excited to have this conversation because I feel like this is where all the good stuff happens, you know. So just in brief, I'm Northwest woman, born and raised. My folks still live in the same house I was raised in. I have family in Portland, so I found myself kind of moving from the Seattle area to Portland. Bounced around a little bit, did San Francisco, Colorado, but eventually I knew I was like, I'm gonna come back home. So, but when I was in Portland with my partner at the time and we were looking for places to open, it seemed like either the place we were trying to open, the community wasn't quite forming yet, or the bubble had kind of already burst in that neighborhood, and we thought we really wanted to be on the ground floor of something incredible. So spring of 2012 at that point, and I get a text one day, and it's like, what about Washougal? Like, what about Washougal? I have family there, you know, I know my cousins were raised out here, so we took a drive across the 205, which is now one of my favorite drives to do. I know I don't have to sit in rush hour traffic like some people, but it's so beautiful any time of day. I really like coming through the bends and everything and getting to see the river and the mountains and everything. So visited Washougal, loved the developer, Lone Wolf Development, Wes Hickey, who's sort of the heart and soul of the downtown here, and just really automatically hit it off with his vision and his idea, his concept for what Washougal could be. And we felt like, you know, I was 26 years old at the time, just a baby and just trying to make my way. And so we thought Washougal was the right home to be. And it was this perfect corner space that I'm sitting in now, windows right on Main Street. And yeah, now it's over 7 years later. And to be totally honest, it doesn't look the way I thought it would look. I didn't even know if we'd make it to 7 years. A lot has changed, but still the core of what we're doing and why I'm here and why I show up every day, that eat real food ethos that's in neon. It's in my heart. It's on our menu. It's on our website. It's in neon on the wall. And I just think that that still rings really true. And that's kind of the joy of being a business owner, right? Is that especially in a small business in a small town where you can just be a part of the fabric of the community, you're always evolving and changing with the needs and the demands, but ultimately you stick to who you are and what you do and why you started it in the first place. So I was kind of rambling, but
that's great. That's great. That's how these things go, right? We're having a conversation. So you decided to name it Our Bar. Where did that name come from, and how does it reflect that ethos that you're talking about?
Yeah, so we definitely, my partner and I definitely wanted to create something that was of the people, for the people, by the people. both industry veterans ourselves, both started in kitchens. And so we'd go out, we met in Colorado and then moved to San Francisco. And in San Francisco, you basically work and you eat and you pay rent, rinse, repeat. So we did a lot of eating and working and paying rent. And we would go out to places and we'd say, oh, this is really cool. You know, I love the way they have tables set up, or their style of service is really interesting and unique. It's kind of a blend of fine dining, but also kind of casual, or you can still get really good customer service at a counter spot. And so we're just always making these mental notes of when we open our bar, when we open our place, you know, so that when we were trying to figure out, you know, what we should call it, it was pretty clear that the name had already been there for a while. To be totally honest, it has caused a lot of confusion because we aren't a bar. I think the beauty and also sort of the double-edged sword of this space is that we've never really fit into any one box. People come here for different things. We have an excellent coffee program, so there's a lot of people, especially through the pandemic, that's been our driving force of regulars. Like all our coffee people are with us. But we also, you know, we do serve beer and wine. I'm working on adding spirits. But we also do breakfast food, and we've done dinner and we've done lunch, and it, you know, took us 3 or 4 years to kind of figure out what our bread and butter, literally, so to speak, was. So I think that the name for me, it's always felt true to how we got here, but then once we were here, I always felt like, okay, what's next? Like, this is our bar, but then what is our bar going to turn into? And I mean, I think it's common knowledge at this point that my partner and I have split. And so, you know, there's a lot of joking around. It's a small town, rumors fly. But ultimately it's still our bar, you know, like that. He's very much still a part of that process. And so what I want to do moving forward is figure out what's the next chapter. You know, I'm not erasing the past. I want to embrace the past and see where it got us, and then move forward with it. So the idea of our bar still lives in the food, in the service, in the how we just want to take care of you from the second you walk in until 10 minutes after you leave. You're still kind of walking on clouds thinking like, wow, I just came in for a cup of coffee and I feel great for the rest of the day. So that being said, that the name will change eventually. We're slowly but surely rebranding and transitioning into the Sleepy Fox model, which is still slowly but surely unfolding. But yeah, that's the how and the when and the
Well,
where.
now what does Sleepy Fox refer to?
I am the Sleepy Fox.
Okay. Because you get up in the morning every day and come in and cook, and it's not your time.
I mean, the sort of silly answer to that question, but very honest answer is I am such a night owl. I will stay up all night, and then I still have to, you know, get up and make the bread in the morning, or come in and let the cook in, or let my barista in, which she has a key now, so sometimes I don't have to be here super early, but yeah, so that was always the joke, is that I love breakfast, because it was a big part of my family tradition growing up. We'd always, even if my brother and he would be in, you know, a different grade and we'd start school at different times of the day, we'd always get up and at least have a smoothie together. So just that importance of a shared meal to start and end the day. But yeah, I'm a mess in the morning. So that was sort of the joke of the Sleepy Foxes, that's me. And but then also it's this idea of this level of comfort that you didn't know you needed. We always talk about our food as like comfort food. It's farm to table, it's craveable, it's local, all these kind of fun buzzwords. But for me, what it really comes back to is I want to be able to take care of you. And so just the idea of that, the circle of how foxes sleep, you know, like when cats or dogs are all curled up and their tail is all tucked in, just that like self-soothing, comfortable space. Like that's really what I want Sleepy Fox to embody.
Well, and you're sitting there in your space right now, which is one of the things that we've done with the previous discussions, is have the background that I have. So we're in the same space, but I think it's important for you to share your space with the rest of us. And I would add that when I think of our bar, I think of people in the community referring to picking some bread up at our bar, heading down to our bar. I was at our bar the other day. So it's still that sort of community place,
Yeah.
even now in the middle of the pandemic. So.
Yeah, I mean, I specifically wanted to sit in front of the bookshelf because this bookshelf was the physical thing that created the look of the space. My partner and I lived in Portland before moving out here almost 9 years ago now. And we moved into this really cool old funky apartment that my uncle lived in before. So some of his stuff was still there. And the bookshelf was one thing. And he was like, well, do you guys just want to keep it? And I thought, yeah, it's kind of funky and neat. It's got definitely got some splinters from it. It's not perfect, but we just love the feel of it. And so when we decided to open this place, the building that we're currently in, the incubator building, it's called, in downtown Shougan, it definitely was brand new and very kind of sterile and beautiful and industrial and modern. And we thought, like, man, we're trying to open a little mom and pop shop, and we're going to put all this reclaimed wood in there. And we were trying to figure out how our space would fit in with this space. And so I literally just took a picture and like made a collage using this as the background of, basically picture this, but a restaurant. And luckily I'm a talented storyteller, so I was able to convey that to the architects that we were working with and the various people that helped us out with constructing the space, my folks and friends and family, and my partner's parents being huge parts of that, helping us just physically make the space what it is. But yeah, it literally all started on that bookshelf and all the recipes and everything that we've collected and have been chefs that we've been inspired by are all with me here in the space.
Well, can you say something about the kind of food that you serve? Because I know food is something that means more to you than just a piece of meat or a loaf of bread.
Yeah, something that I have always put on every cover letter I've ever drafted, most of my emails that I've ever sent in any sort of like culinary professional way, is that food is more than a necessity, it's an opportunity. It's pretty cut and dry. People need to eat, they need to drink water to survive. But then also the privilege to be able to afford to go out and eat is it's a privilege, but it's also, it means it's an opportunity. So for me, in how I cook food, I rattled off the name of all the different buzzwords that people use, the farm to table and organic and sustainable. And the thing that I always come back to is my mom one year gave me this little fridge magnet, which, side note, I love a good fridge magnet with a pun. I think our local Bi-Mart has some of the best fridge magnets in town. But she gave me this one, and it's just this 50s era kind of housewife, pointing at something, and it's like a vegetable, and it just says, eat real food, or eat organic food, or as our grandparents called it, food. We're not reinventing the wheel here. So what I really want to do, and is just coming back to that comfort, and I want to take care of you, and I want to provide that ultimate kind of business owner, mama bear energy that I feel like I have and that I bring. I really want people to be able to look at the food and say, well, that's just mashed potatoes and an egg and salsa, but it's mashed potatoes and egg and a salsa that I made for you. So I want people we have such an amazing group of regulars, of diehard people that have just stayed with us through all the ups and downs and all the changes and hours and menus and pandemic and whatever. That I want them to know that I chose that plate with that specific trim because I remember you told me a story one time about how your grandma used to have a plate that looked like that. Or I know that you like a little bit extra coffee, and we have this one mug that's closer to 14 ounces than 12 ounces. So I always make sure I put that one out for you. And it's just those little things that you remember that I want people to feel. So yeah, at the end of the day, it's just food. But really, I want the food to have a deeper impact, and I want you to come back. I mean, because I'm a business and I need your money, but also I want you, the individual, to come back. And I think if you're made to feel special, then that you will come back. For whatever reason, you'll just be drawn to the places and to the people that make you feel whole like that.
How does that translate into dealing with this pandemic? How has that, can you tell us about that? Because I've thought about you a lot.
It's a wild ride. It is wild, and it is not over yet. It's not over. So that has been really interesting. It has been very emotional. I had to lay off my entire staff. I just burst into tears. I mean, like it makes me emotional thinking about it because they're not all still back with me. I have one amazing woman who's stuck with me the whole time. She has been working 6 days a week, and she's such a rock star, and she is keeping me and this space afloat. Sarah, my manager, my sister, at this point, we're basically bonded as family. So she and I just, luckily we think the same, but we have different enough brains that we're able to kind of jump in and problem solve. And so I have I'm the heart and soul of this place. And she was like, well, what about this idea? What about that idea? What about this? And so we were really able to just pivot every single day as necessary to make it work. And how that ended up going was mostly takeout. Well, all takeout for a long time. And then trying out different forms of, okay, what does takeout mean? We're a breakfast place. I have a personal conviction, very strong, passionate feeling that pancakes don't belong in boxes. But when the governor says you have to put your pancakes in boxes, then I say, all right, I will put my pancakes in boxes. So we had to figure out how to tweak the menu and how to make it work so that we were still providing the same quality and care, but knowing that it would be not as hot and still just as delicious, but not quite the same. So there's been a lot of that, a lot of kind of soul searching, but then also very quick, okay, we make a decision, we go with it. And making sure that whatever we do, everybody, ourselves included, starting with our own health and safety, and then looking towards the customer and say, I know you want to sit down. I know you want to enjoy it the way it was. I know you want to experience this space the way you used to, but it's just not possible. And so what we've been really trying to do is just educate and give information and really, really just go as slow and methodical as we can with the reopening. Because some businesses were in a position to be able to afford to close down for a week and kind of reconfigure. And to be very open and honest with you, I could not afford to do that. Closing my doors would mean closing them forever. So luckily, I had some employees who were able to go on unemployment, which is great. And they were able to kind of just breathe and feel safe and feel healthy. I was able to bring my cook back, which was crucial because he had just started. His name's Ricky, and it was one of those perfect scenarios where he was a regular who would always come in and eat the food, and we were sort of ships passing in the night where we eventually figured out a time when I was like, why don't you just come in and stage and hang out in the kitchen? And as soon as we were back there working together, it was just like, all right, this is gonna be good. It's such a dance back there. So slowly we're getting our team back. And then to finish that one too, the other big piece of it is I'm a mom, and I luckily have a good relationship with her dad, my former partner, and we've been able to work out our schedules where one of us is always working, but she gets to be with one of us when the other one is working. So that's been crucial because nothing is worth missing her, her growing up, her everything, she's a year and a half now. And pandemic or no pandemic, I can't imagine putting the restaurant before her. So that's like health and safety, wellness of everybody, including our mental health and sanity, but also I have to be a mom. So we're never going to be open on Sundays because that's my day, that's my crew focused day. So there's a lot that goes into every decision. And I know it can be really frustrating when people say, well, can't I just, squeeze an extra chair out there? And we say, well, technically, yes, you can, but also, here's why. And so we just have to kind of go through our process with everybody. And for the most part, honestly, people have been really, really understanding and they get it. This is not normal. This is unprecedented.
Well, I came in and purchased some bread one day and a sandwich, and I was really pleased when I walked in because I don't know if it was, did you say Sarah?
Sarah.
Yeah, I don't know if it was Sarah or not, but she was behind the counter and she had a mask on. And so I paid for my food, and then I stepped outside, and there was no question about that. I just felt like I felt more comfortable waiting outside. It was actually one of the first times that I had gone anywhere. I still am very careful. And so, but I observed that it was clear to me that that was a standard practice. She wasn't pulling it up when I came in, and it was a well-fitting mask. And anyway, this was a time before the mask order was put in place. And so I really appreciated that that was happening before it was directed. So thank you for doing that. And what was that like for you, trying to figure, I mean, you said you pivoted, but what was that like trying to figure all of that out?
Yeah, I mean, I really have to give a lot of credit to Sarah for that, because I'm admittedly pretty stubborn. I have a strong creative direction. I have a strong passion. I have strong convictions. I know what I want, and I believe I can make it happen. And Sarah she's reading all the articles. She's staying up to date. She's very, science and fact based. And so between my like visionary sort of, oh, we could make it work, to her being like, well, yeah, but here are the rules. We were able to find a really beautiful, happy medium that has resulted in incredible food and service under very safe and up-to-date, processes. So definitely have to shout her out and give her a lot of credit for that. And also just kind of helping rein me in of like, Alex, you can't do that. But I want to. And the masks, I honestly, I'm grateful that at least on the state level, they just kind of ratcheted up and just said, okay, everyone has to wear them. Okay, now the businesses have to enforce it, because I think what was one of the most difficult things as a business owner and trying to convey to my growing group of employees here was that, when you live in this gray area, and then there's this concern of, oh, everyone has to wear a mask, but then we don't want to discriminate. And what if somebody feels unsafe, or what if somebody has a medical condition that isn't visibly apparent, or, whatever. When we were in that gray area, when we didn't have to enforce it, it made it really uncomfortable and difficult for us. So we were really grateful when the governor said, you know what, you got to enforce it. And in my experience, the liquor board, the property manager, and the building owner, the city. I mean, I'm biased. I love the city, but everybody, the taxing authorities, my purveyors, everybody is working so hard to make this work for everybody. I haven't worked with I had some debts that I had accrued. Everybody's working to get me on payment plans. I mean, nobody is throwing down the hammer. Nobody's knocking down my door. I think that's been the most enlightening thing for me too, to say like, I'm freaking out every day trying to figure out how I'm going to keep my doors open, thinking that, somebody's going to come with my cable bill that I'm, a few weeks late on or whatever. But everybody has really just rallied around this. And so it makes those decisions, those difficult decisions I have to make of, do we put a table outside? Do we not put a table outside? Do we invest in the stanchions and the umbrellas and for a couple months of sunshine and then put them in storage? I'm very grateful to have the support of all these various entities. Really, I feel like they have the back of the small business community. And fortunately, I was able to qualify for one of the payroll protection loans. For personal reasons, I had to wait for a while before I could apply. But then when I was able to apply, it was in this third round of funding, and incredibly, incredibly grateful to the Restaurant Association and the Small Business Association for really lobbying hard to say, hey, this is great that we're doing this, but we have to listen to the feedback that we were getting and saying, spending it in 8 weeks, 8 weeks is not a long time. And it's with this pandemic situation that's constantly changing, we really need to spread that out, and then in the repayment of it. So that has been incredibly helpful and kind of taken some of the pressure off of like, we got to hit those pre-COVID numbers, which is a fantasy at this point.
So what are some of the guidelines?
For the PPP specifically?
But yes, that you're having to accommodate to. Yeah,
so you have to spend 60% of it on payroll, because that's the whole point of it. They want to keep people working, and they want to bring people back to work. One of the issues that they fixed with the new guidelines was that you had to show that you offered people their jobs at the same wage or higher, and that they said no. So I had all these conversations, I texted my employees, some of them would prefer to talk over the phone. And I just felt really gross about like, hey, I got to document this, because I don't want you to sue me, or I don't want to not be able to pay the money back. So I was really appreciative that they backed off on that, because these are people's lives, and these are people who I pay more than minimum wage. I pay as a small business as much as I can. I'm not in a position to be able to offer things like health insurance. So people were having to go elsewhere for that. And I get it. You don't want to come back to work. You don't want to be on the front lines of these, restaurants and bars have been hotspots of COVID activity, unfortunately, because you can't wear a mask while you're eating. And while you're eating, that's when the particles come out. So I fully understand and respect why people wouldn't want to come back to work. And I never took any of it personally. But I'm also really grateful that I don't have to like track them down and get them to sign a document just so I can, have this loan forgiven. So that's been a huge thing. And then also any money that isn't forgivable, that they spread it out over a 5-year, 1% loan, which is like in small business. I mean, that's a good, 1% is amazing anyway, but, being a small business owner with not the best credit in the world, that was just like mind blowing that I would even be able to qualify for that. So, and I know talking about money is not fun. People don't like to talk about it, but also at the end of the day, I'm standing here in my business 6 days a week, having to field the question of, how are you doing? Are you going to make it? And I'm just like kind of crawling in my skin. You can't see my smile anymore because of the mask, but just trying to grin and bear it and say like, I know you're so well-intentioned with what you're saying, but I honestly don't know if I'm going to make it. And it's scary. And I'm so glad that you're here. What can I get you?
Right.
So.
I imagine every time somebody asks you that kind of thing, it sparks anxiety. Mm-hmm. I at least that's what would happen for me, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it's anxiety, but also like, this is a high anxiety industry, as you well know. It's even if you're just bussing tables or washing dishes, something could happen. The fridge could go out. Somebody could, be too drunk at the bar. There's so many things that could happen, and that's why I love it. I mean, it's always kind of on fire a little bit, Not here because we have electric, so there's no gas, which I admittedly miss, being able to play with fire in a controlled way. But it's really, it's this adrenaline pumping industry. And so it's like, we're already kind of ready for that. But then, Sarah and I, especially going through this together, we're functioning at like this level stress when we were used to functioning at this level. And we're just like, okay, at some point we can bring it back down here, right? To like normal stress level. So I don't want to, shame or call anyone out for just asking us how we're doing, because it's such a simple question. And like I said, it's so well-intentioned. And I just appreciate that they're, coming in for a cup of coffee or a loaf of bread. But it's hard because I don't know. And there are some days when we don't see a customer for an hour and a half and I'm thinking, I just want to go home and be with my daughter or my dog or go for a run or be anywhere but here thinking about how I'm going to make this work. But ultimately, I love it, and I can't imagine doing anything else. So I'm just going to keep showing up every day and figuring it out.
So the PPP has helped. You also got the Kiva loan. Can you talk about that?
Oh, Kiva is so cool. So it started as purely international, and the idea was it's crowdsourced, like a Kickstarter, GoFundMe. The difference is that it's a loan. It's not a donation. So they have a minimum of $25 to loan. And so you invest in somebody. And my partner and I did one initially as part of our capital raising. And that was for a smaller amount. And it was basically just to help us get that last little bit of stuff that we needed to open our doors, paid for a lot of the tables and things like that, or the materials to build the tables. So this time around, the PPP is great, but it's very specific. You have to spend it on very specific things. But where I'm at is I want to be able to move the business forward. And I need to be able to pay my employees, and the PPP is taking care of that, and pay my rent and taxes, anything that's like extra that's included in that. So that's, overhead costs are taking care of that. But how do I transition this space? How do I reimagine, recontextualize my dream, my vision, like the future of our bar, Sleepy Fox, in this world that we're living in, this COVID era? And that's going to take a little bit of investment, whether it's purchasing new tables or doing something to the outdoor space, buying more refrigeration, so I can turn into more of a marketplace kind of vibe. There's buying a grinder so we can offer decaf espresso. I mean, it's all these little things that's a couple $100, a couple $1,000 here and there. So the Kiva is going to be crucial in helping that. And the way that loan is structured is, so it's all crowdsourced, which is incredible. I think there's over 300 individuals who have loaned to that, and there's different groups that do it. They have a really incredible online lending community. And what's great about it is you have a 6-month grace period once your loan is fully funded, and then you have a shorter time to pay it off, but it's 0 interest. So Kiva's not over there like collecting money, and their whole thing is that they started internationally, really small micro lending, $500 to somebody who's just trying to buy another head of cattle so they can, maximize their milk production, say. But for people like me, who I'm in this position of, I'm a small business owner, doing the best I can, trying to get that credit score up, but ultimately, and I think you've seen this on some of my posts, but I'll share it again, that something that a commercial lender told me when I was first going out to try and get, raise capital funds to open, is I said, asking for money for restaurants is kind of like swearing in public. You can do it, but people will look at you funny. And it's like, well, I'm trying to open a restaurant, so I guess that's what I'm doing. I'm going to swear in public a lot, I guess. So I've always kind of kept that in the back of my head. Because it's, I don't have access to that kind of just typical go into the bank and fill out some paperwork and here's your loan or here's your line of credit. So it's been really kind of scrappy, crowdsourced, friends and family, community, grassroots funding that has really made that possible. So I'm incredibly grateful to have built a community here locally and then be able to tap into that Kiva international community to be able to get that kind of support so I can have like a little bit of breathing room to be able to make those decisions to move the business forward.
Well, one of the things, I'm looking at the time, we've been talking for about half an hour, so a little bit more, so maybe 5 or 10 more minutes. So I have a lot of other questions. I ask a lot of questions, but I would love to get a couple of examples of the creative pivoting that you did in the beginning that carried you through when you kind of found out that you were going to have to close everything down, change your business model. What kinds of things did you do?
Yeah, so I think the easiest thing we did was we revamped the menu. We only took a few things off the menu, but specifically we took the pancakes off. Because we knew that they were one of the most popular breakfast things, because pancakes is such an easy sell. We use real maple syrup, of course, but the batter is really only good for a day. And so we were making really small batches. And in the beginning, when everything was just going up in flames and nobody knew what they were doing and everyone was supposed to stay home, we thought, we don't want to even waste a cup of flour. So we really had to look at those thin margins and just realize, okay, people can have French toast because the bread is more stable than the batter. So little things like that, those little tweaks. And then we really just made sure that we stayed whatever we did, we tried to be as consistent as possible. So we say, these are our hours, we're going to stick with them. And we started by I think we were open for 3 hours a day or something the first couple weeks, and trying to give ourselves some space to just figure out what to do and get really creative with maybe run a special, maybe offer some grab and go items. So we were doing like dinners for 2, whole roast Cornish game hen, and that worked for a while, but a lot of people were cooking at home and getting really excited about cracking open that Bon Appetit that they had been saving or looking online. And so we found that just ended up resulting in a fair amount of waste, and it was a lot of energy and effort on my end to create these specials. And then if we just sat on them, that made it really hard. Another thing we did was we started the Feed It Forward program, which I can't take credit for the program. It exists in various forms all over the country, but the idea was you make a donation of $8, and we worked it out on our end to be able to make sense for the business. And that would provide a meal, one meal for a person in the community. So we partnered with Wayne Pattison, who's just sort of all around awesome guy. He was the former president of the senior association here and a friend of mine. And he said, well, I've got the Eagle Scouts are looking for things to do. And so it was about every other week we would provide meals for the seniors, and we would use this Feed It Forward program, and we received so much support from the community. I think you yourself donated to that, so thank you. And we're still sitting on a balance for that. So that money is just, saved for anyone that wants to come into the business. And a majority of our things, the potato and egg, the basket, the French toast, is all $8. So it's a program that was created out of the necessity of COVID, because these seniors, it wasn't necessarily like an economic impact. It was that they're a population who needed to stay home. And so it was more of a morale boost. Like, let's bring you some food. And it was also a good way to connect sort of the generations of the Eagle Scouts and the seniors. And it was honestly really fun. I mean, we had the big table. We were serving on average about 50 to 55 people every other week. And so it was just big sort of catering, everything spread out, getting everything all made. So yeah, that was a lot of fun, and it's something I want to keep doing beyond.
So it's not happening right now, or you said you have a balance. So yeah. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so we did it, well, at least the big format ones with feeding the group of seniors. We did that about 4 times every other week, and that was great. But then Wayne went up to property he has in Alaska. And so Rob took it over, the current president of Senior Association. But then we thought, maybe we'll just take a break for a minute. Things are starting to reopen. We're going to throw a couple tables outside to see how that goes. So we're kind of waiting for another month or so just to see what happens there. But the program is still live and well, and we're trying to spread the word to people in the community and say, if you just want a meal, then come in and just say, I'd like to participate in the Feed It Forward program, and $8 comes off the meal. So it's more slowly getting used that way, but I'd love for that message to be spread throughout the community. And it's something that people have paid for. It was a way that community members is like, maybe I don't need a coffee every day, maybe I don't need a loaf of bread every day, but maybe I could buy somebody else. I could support the business, but I could also buy somebody that needs it more than me a meal. So.
Oh, I love that idea. So you're going to continue Feed It Forward in a sort of expanded way as you're transitioning through all of this. You were telling me when we first got on Zoom that you were trying to figure out your outdoor space and what you might do. So it sounds like you're still grappling with that question.
Yeah, and it's a work in progress. There's a lot of entities that all need to agree, but ultimately, as I said earlier, everybody's working really hard to agree, but there's code, there's right-of-way, there's design, there's implementation, there's time frames, there's sourcing of the actual, stanchions and everything. So I'd say we're still a couple weeks out on that. I got to get it done before the summer's over, obviously. But I like to do things with intention. I like to do things that aren't just throwing a couple of random cones out on the street and calling it good. I really want whatever's on the exterior of the space to reflect what we're doing inside. So still a work in progress, but yeah, right now we have a couple tables out there, and it gets pretty hot. It's south facing, so it's kind of intense, but luckily we're only open until 1. So as long as you get here early enough, you get a little bit of shade in the morning, and we ask people to limit their stay to no more than an hour, just so we can, offer the seats to other people too. But primarily, we're just doing takeout. That's mostly what people are wanting from us.
So your hours of operation are?
We are Monday through Friday, 8 to 1, Saturdays, 8 to 11, and then Sundays closed. It's family day.
Yeah, it was family day in my house when I was growing up too, although sometimes we were at the restaurant, but it was family day. Couldn't go anywhere. I remember that very clearly, and I'm grateful to my mother now. I wasn't when I was in high school.
Yeah, I think about it now, and I definitely had some resentment. Like, I don't want to come home from my friend's house. I want to keep staying. But man, that really instilled in me, we come together physically as a family around this table, not in front of the TV. We didn't really have a TV, but there was just something about what happens here at this table. That's so important. And I'm so grateful to my parents for doing that for my brother and I. And I hope to create that again for my daughter.
That's wonderful. So I was going to ask you about running for city council and being a city councilwoman, and that's a whole other conversation. But is there anything that you want to say about that, about what you've been dealing with there?
Yeah, I absolutely love it. I think we have such an incredible team. It's not something I set out to do or aspire to do necessarily, but when I saw an opportunity to be appointed to the position, I just thought, it's like wanting to become a parent. You just have this internal like, I want to do this. And so yeah, I went for it and I was appointed, and that was an incredible, huge learning curve of trying to figure out from this community organizer, let's do it. It's like bureaucracy. Okay, we have to run it through all the appropriate channels. And I've created such strong bonds with all of our department heads. And I have so much respect for the work that they do. I mean, they're still running the city. Things are still happening. Projects are still going out to bid. I mean, they're doing such a good job. Yeah, but just for me personally, I think I am quite a bit younger than some of the other council members. And I think I represent a voice that is very much here in the community, but oftentimes doesn't see itself reflected in the leadership. So I'm here to listen, and I'm here to continue to amplify that voice that I'm hearing, the conversations that I'm having day to day with friends and regulars, or just people I meet out in the community. So I want to keep doing that work as long as the city will have me.
Well, you have your ear to the ground of the community in a way that people who are in other spheres don't, because you are coming in contact with people from all walks of life every single day.
Yeah.
That's what happens in a restaurant. You don't choose who's coming in. People come in and they're in all kinds of moods, and they're hungry, and they need that comfort.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense. So
Yeah.
one of the question that I have, the final question I'm asking everyone is, what would you want from me if I were to make it to the legislature? So that's my plan, is to make it to the legislature. But what can I do to help someone like you and our community? I mean, we could probably talk about that for half an hour.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, things like this, I think I said it at the top of the conversation, but this is where the good stuff happens. Whether it starts with one-on-one, I'm such a podcast fan, whether, you work with the schools to create a podcast so that, the youth can hear their voice spoken and that they can connect with what's happening, at the state level. I think that conversations like this are so important. And I think you're just such a genuinely, naturally, honest person and open person. Like, you and I don't know each other personally very well, but also I do feel like I know you really well, just in the few interactions that we've had. So bringing that sense of authenticity to that slow burn of the system and the way government, we know how it works, I think would just breathe a lot of life into it. So that's not really a tangible ask, but just that you continue showing that you can be a politician. And I try and do this too, without having to fit the same suit that people think you have to fit. Like, you can be a person, you can be a mom, you can be a cat, dog owner, whatever, and you can still be a good politician and make things happen. So
that sounds like a really great note to end on. I thank you for that. And I hadn't thought of continuing these discussions. Actually, I probably will continue these discussions, even whether I win the election, don't win the election, as I move forward, because I know that I have a lot of things I'm going to do. And one of the things that I love best is hearing the stories from people like you, the people that I've been talking with. And I want to make an invitation to anyone who's still watching at this point. Let me know if you would like to have a discussion and talk about your experience in the community. And the 18th is huge, so it encompasses almost all of Southwest Washington, at least circles around it. And so there are a lot of different kind of people here, and we have different experiences. So thank you so much, Alex. I'm going to stop the live stream now and say thank you very much for doing this with me. I enjoyed it a lot.
this is great. I loved it.
Okay, and I'll stop the recording.